Hello, and welcome to the A.D.H.Deep-Dive, the show that's not about ADHD, but is filled with proof it exists. My name is David J. Mund, and 30 years ago to the day of this episode's release, a prophecy began. June 10th, 1994. A boy was born approximately 8:30-ish in the morning. A boy that would go on to be technically many things he eventually wanted to be. But one of the biggest things that he wanted to be was an astronaut. He was huge into the stars and space in general, and learning everything he could about every planet in our solar system and each planet's moons and different galaxies outside of our own. Something he was kind of obsessed about for the better part of at least elementary school, until one fateful day. Well, many fateful days, but the accumulation of these fateful days led this boy to believe he could not be an astronaut because he was colorblind. Let's stop talking in the third person. Yeah, so I was really big into, every kid is into astronomy, right? When kids find out that there's planets outside of their own, the idea of there already being 8 billion people on our planet is too big to wrap your head around. But then to learn that there's other planets and then other star systems and then other galaxies and then potentially other universes is so grandiose of a concept that it's nearly impossible to wrap your head around when you're a kid. It's impossible to wrap your head around now as an adult. But at the time, it felt a little different, right? Like, again, I know that every kid is obsessed with space, but it became sort of part of my identity, something that's really never left. I got space tattoos all along the right side of my body. Not that anybody who doesn't is a fake space fan. You're just a space poser, bro. But yeah, as I started to develop as a child, it became glaringly obvious that I was colorblind and at least had a few color deficiencies, which, I gotta be honest, maybe is not make or break as an astronaut. You might be able to be an astronaut, a colorblind astronaut. But someone being my parents, this was not malicious. It was more just a grand concept of a conversation. Also, sorry, I'm trying to focus now, but my downstairs neighbors are both screaming at their children and their children are crying. So it's just a whole bunch of loud noise. It's definitely going to distract me because this is the show that's not about ADHD, but is filled with proof it exists. And one of those things that I get distracted by are just ridiculously loud noises that don't stop. Okay, I'm moving on. But anyways, my parents told me, not maliciously, just like conversationally, being a colorblind astronaut is not a possibility. And that stopped me dead in my tracks. Once like that was fully articulated and expressed to me, like, you can't be this, I spent the rest of my life believing that. Now, at this point, that is true. I cannot be an astronaut. I will not be an astronaut. It has nothing to do with the colorblind thing. There's just a lot more research, and I would have had to make a few different life and career choices to end up an astronaut. Maybe one day in my dying age, we'll have Airbuses that take us into space, just into low Earth orbit for little peons like you and me. Right now, it's just the billionaires going to space and their best buddies. But yeah, my understanding is that now I will not be going to space. And I'm not blaming my parents, not just for telling me I couldn't, but because I'm colorblind. But I'm also not blaming my parents for birthing a colorblind kid, right? For me, there's probably no telling exactly when I was told you're not going to be an astronaut, or you can't be an astronaut, or astronauts can't be colorblind. I know it was probably mid to late elementary school. It is at that point that I gave up on my first dream. Gave up on it. I was really big into like studying all of the different planets' moons and like learning all the different star systems in our galaxy and learning about all the adjacent galaxies that we know about. It was a really big thing for me, just educationally. I wanted to learn more constantly. And then I was told that I couldn't do it. And so I believed them and I stopped and never cared about it again. And that was like I said, the first example of me giving up on a dream. Later on in life, before we go down this rabbit hole of me giving up on dreams, let's address the elephant in the room. Yes, technically, today, if you're listening on the day that it is released, June 10th, it is my birthday, my 30th birthday. And I'm going to talk about a few different things other than the dreams that I've given up. I think it would be interesting to just go through a list of things that happened in 1994, the year that I was born. Some pretty big history or historical news stories. But, that was... I don't know where I'm going with this. I'm just telling you it's my birthday, okay? We'll talk about that a little bit later. Dreams, right? I gave up on my dream of being an astronaut. In high school, something that I think is pretty directly relevant. Well, no, we'll talk about the directly relevant thing. From third grade on to my freshman year of high school, I played football. Something, again, I was extremely passionate about. And during the duration, from that third to ninth grade period, I was what was considered a scrawny kid. And then around my freshman year, when we started getting access to like the weight room and the gym, I was still a smaller kid, but I got what could be considered fit for a freshman in high school. And while on the JV football team, something that I had always done throughout football was run the ball. Now, our team was really small, and for the longest time, you're playing for Pop Warner football. But, so of course, nothing really matters. The accolades don't matter at that point. They don't matter later on in life. Nothing matters. But at the time, football, it's not like I was showing promise of being a overly skilled football player. There was nobody recruiting me that young, is what I'm trying to say. But I loved it. I loved everything about it. And one of the big things for me was running the ball. I was either a fullback or just a running back in general. Fullback came as a freshman. Okay, let's talk about the freshman year. I'm all over the place. I already understand. It's been a month since I've done these podcasts. You got to practice in order to be good at these. But freshman year came around and I wasn't on the starting team. There was maybe 20 people on the team tops. And I think there's 11 people out on the football field. And so if we needed a substitute, I would get thrown in. Until about the second or third game of the season, when the starting fullback broke their arm, which meant you need a permanent backup. You need your second string in for the year. And I was the second string. And that ended up being, for me, the most validating year of football that I had ever had, because I had such a, on paper, successful freshman year of football. Being a fullback was like, like I said, becoming part of my identity because I was good at it just that year. It's not something that I was great at year long or a career long or whatever. But it became a dream of mine for a quick minute in time. It's like, I'm being validated for this thing I'm good at. People are telling me that I'm good at this thing. They're appreciating me for being good at it. And it might be getting me some friends. Then, sophomore year, right before the season starts, it has come to my attention that like my grades from the previous year were sort of alarming in that if they continued slipping in the way that they were, then I might only get 1 or 2 games under my belt for the year before I ultimately become ineligible. And if I become ineligible, I can't play football. And this is not to make excuses about the lazy kid that I ultimately probably was. But school, as in school work, was very difficult for me. I think conceptually I understood school. I feel like with the right application or right mindset or lack of an attention deficit disorder, I probably would have had relatively good grades. I feel like I was a smart kid. But I could not commit to turning in my homework. When I left school, I couldn't do more school. I couldn't do my homework at home. And again, this is not to blame my parents, but my parents weren't breathing down my neck for me to get my homework done. And so ultimately, yes, I believed that there was nothing I could do about it anyway. So rather than improving my grades, I just quit football and I didn't play for the rest of my high school career, which ultimately ended up becoming a 5-year high school career because of the aforementioned grade issues, which I think maybe we've talked about on this podcast. Not really worth me talking about it right now. I was a 5th-year senior because of these homework issues, okay? But there goes another dream that somebody told me would end if X, Y, or Z, or because of X, Y, and Z. The dream ended because I believed someone else, or I believed someone else's suspicions about the truth. And so rather than trudging through, trying to be better, trying to defy the odds, I just believed them and gave up and quit. Dream number 2. Dream number 3 is one that I'm trying to reconcile a bit in this moment. I've talked about it endlessly on this podcast, but if you're not familiar, in that same freshman year, I started a band I transitioned from this band that didn't actually exist between my buddy Ethan and me. Ethan and I wasn't good in school. Don't judge me. Anyways, for all intents and purposes, the band Live for Tomorrow started my freshman year of high school with myself, Ethan Hingston, Eddie Avila, and Nikolai Van Steenis. And for me, that went on for about 5 years. 6 years? Probably 6 years. Maybe even 7 years. Let's see. Let's put that on a timeline. That would be 2009 to 2014. So there you go, 5 years. Wild to think I was only in that for 5 years. But how successful can a band be in a small town in northern Michigan, right? When you're high schoolers, when you're kids. That's the important caveat. How successful can a band full of high schoolers be in a small town in northern Michigan? Well, according to my perception of people that I talked to, or people whose opinion I valued, it's not going to be successful. You're going to be stuck to playing the local battle of the bands or the local venue 45 minutes away that puts on shows for high school aged kids, and maybe 20 to 30 people will come to those shows. And it's the same 20 to 30 people you see year after year, show after show. And I believed, based on the perception of others, that that is unsustainable. That like, okay, yeah, you can be in a band, but like you're going to have to get a real job. You're going to have to give up on that at some point. Not every band can be X band you love or care about. And so it's better for you to accept reality now than it is when you turn 30 and you realize that life and art isn't just handed to you. And so in 2014, based on my own ego and the perceptions of others, the opinions of others whose words I really shouldn't have given a single shit about, Judah, just go. I gave up on another dream. And maybe I could just stop there, right? You kind of get it at this point. Much of my pre-20s life was jumping from dream to dream, but giving up on each dream. And yes, I think it's important to reflect that, especially before you're 21, but I guess even in your 20s, which we'll get to, you're just trying to figure out who you are, right? You only have one life, and that is the life, for most, the life of your high school peer group and then your family back home. Like, that's it. That's really the only people you see. That's the only life that you know in your small little hometown, or maybe it's a big hometown. But the thing is, like, there's a lot of constant, unless there are some wild, life-changing, drastic experiences or moments that happen that fundamentally change the direction of your life. I'm just saying I didn't really have any of those moments. It was a lot of monotony, and the part of that monotony was giving up on my dreams and stopping them dead in their tracks. Not that I now look back and say, well, if I would have kept going at X, Y, or Z, I would have found success at 21. I probably would not have. But how could I know that, right? How could I ever know that just by guessing? All that to say, my 20s ended up being a strange grounding experience of, well, let's go through some of that timeline, right? Getting married, getting divorced, fleeing my hometown, crawling back, settling in on 2 or 3 jobs that I thought I'd have to settle for because that's the big boy responsible thing to do, working at a bank or whatever full-time jobs I got that I ultimately ended up hating. None of those things in my 20s ended up being my constant either. I feel like I know myself maybe less now than I did going into my 20s. Because when you go into your 20s, there's at least this semi-semblance of hopefulness that, like, this is the decade. I'm going to do it. You still have that naive ambition that you had when you were a kid, but you're like interacting with people in the real world. So you're like trying to peacock as if you are something more than just your average Joe, which is okay. It is okay to be an average Joe in an average job with an average life. But my ego or my desperation to be noticed, made that really difficult for me through my 20s. I was never able to settle on a thing I cared enough about to commit to, which propels me into my 30s with kind of a weird reset. I don't know. I also don't know if what I'm saying makes any sense. I'm just trying to go through a timeline of dreams I've given up on so that I can say, as I sit before you today, 29 years, 363 days old. Although if you're watching this, it's officially, I'm 30. All that to say, fuck that giving up on dreams shit, right? When I wasn't doing what I loved in my teens, I was miserable. When I wasn't doing what I loved in my 20s, I was miserable. The only thing that I've really learned is that if I'm not doing the things that I love in my 30s, I'll probably also be miserable. And since there's been so much misery, and since there's been so much disappointment, I might as well just keep trying to do what I love, right? Yes, I'm coming into these decisions with a little bit more of an informed opinion. I must have a job while also trying to do what I love. I must keep my mental health in check while also trying to do what I love. These things can be part of the same project, but they also need to be independent. I can't directly tie my love of art in any capacity to my view of my own self-worth. I have to kind of separate those two. And while I don't know how to do that or what to do in order to get closer to being able to do that, there is a bit of an awareness that like giving up on my dreams is unacceptable at this point. And maybe I'm learning that and saying that out loud so that I can beat it into my own head. In fact, I probably am just saying this in real time for me to manifest some sense of hope. Not that I will manifest the dreams I am ambitious to accomplish. Just trying to manifest some hope here because I don't even know if I believe what I'm saying. I'm just trying to convince myself to believe that my best days are ahead of me and that my teens and my 20s informed some of the decisions I will make in my 30s to get closer to those dreams that I might still not ultimately accomplish until I'm 40 or 50 or 60 or 70 or maybe never accomplish at all. But isn't it better to like think I'm going to make it or hope that I'm going to make it rather than sitting and reflecting on what life could have been like if I would have stopped giving up on my dreams? Like if I give up on my dreams now, I'm probably still going to be broke, probably still going to be a little bit lonely, probably still going to be a little bit scared. But to not have that art as a supplemental source of personal validation aside from just that freaking paycheck or that partner or that whatever other life goal I come across. What the fuck am I saying? What am I saying? I'm done giving up on my dreams. I am too ambitious to just stop. I should probably stop talking right now so I can clip this and maybe kind of restructure this podcast. I just thought we'd go down a little trip through memory lane of all the dreams I've given up on so that I can say when I'm watching this, David, you got to just keep going, right? And I know that's very cliche coming out of my mouth at this point. You have to just keep going. Yes, David, we've heard that. But like you give up on shit on all the time. No. Not anymore. Not for a while. I'm going to be maybe unacceptably ambitious for the next 10 years because I feel like now I'm running out of time. Whereas in the past, maybe my excuse for giving up was like, whatever, I'm this young or whatever. There's still plenty of time for me to do X, Y, or Z. And even though there kind of still is, yes, I'm young, I ain't getting any younger. And that's, yeah, these are very cliche things that I'm saying, and maybe I'm not saying them to you, the listener. Maybe I'm just saying them to you, David, in the editing bay. Just keep going, dude. Keep playing music. Keep at least attempting the podcast once a month. Keep making short films. Keep making stupid little sketches on your phone. And keep believing that you can do these things and be happy. That, like, it's not one or the other. Okay, I'll be right back. All right, y'all. If you're watching the video version, see that skull? See this? This is not a punk house, it's a punk home banner. All of these things are available at catandcrew.com. That's right. They're the first sponsors. Catandcrew.com. Enter the promo code MONDAY. It's Monday, MUNDAY, to receive 10% off of your final purchase. You can get those koozies, you can get banners, you can get earrings, you can get coasters, you can get skull planters. I think it's really cool that they decided to give A.D.H.Deep-Dive listeners an exclusive deal, because, you know, it's cool that we're building a little audience here and that you guys get to have some sort of special perks that nobody else gets. So if you aren't familiar with it yet, go to catandcrew.com, enter the promo code MONDAY, MUNDAY at checkout, get 10% off your final order. Okay, back to the show. All right, for this next chunk of time, I think it's important to address another elephant in the room. I haven't eaten breakfast yet, and I can hear my stomach rumbling very loudly, and it might even get picked up on the microphone. Probably not. I always assume that something's getting picked up on the microphone, and it's usually not, but my belly's grumbling. But for this next next chunk of time, I thought maybe it would be fun or cringe, I don't know, to go over a few things that happened the year I was born. I don't have exact dates on these, and many of these I don't even understand. I didn't do my research. I just looked for some news headlines that occurred in 1994 so we could talk about them, and then maybe I will pretend as if I know more about them and rant about them. But let's see. Okay. So things that happened in 1994. The main headline, the OJ stuff. I don't think that the trial was until 1995, or at least from the late night research I did last night at about 11:50 p.m. Nicole Brown Simpson and the other guy, I don't fucking know, were killed. And this is when the big white Bronco chase with OJ happened. And then the pre-trial stuff, which conceptually is still something that is talked about to this day, mainly more recently because O.J. Simpson just died. But that was a huge news story that at the time, especially because I'm a newborn, no way could I have wrapped my head around. I couldn't have wrapped my head around any of this shit, but it's just important to remember the reverberating effects of all these things 30 years later, thinking about what's happening right now and what will we remember 30 years later when I'm 60 and reflecting on what happened 30 years ago. So the OJ stuff happened. Another thing I don't really know much about, we'll get into some things I know a little bit more about. Ice skater attack. I can't remember the name of the actual ice skater. And you know what? Whatever. Fuck it. We're just going to conjecture about it. All I know is that there was an Olympic ice skater named Tanya Harding. And there was a different ice skater. And that professional ice skater was being heralded as like the best in the world, or at least the best in the United States. And I believe it was either before a huge ice skating competition or maybe even the Olympics that this aforementioned ice skater that was not Tanya Harding was attacked. And I believe someone like with some sort of weapon, it was either a bat or a club of some sort or whatever, just bashed in her leg and like broke her leg before the competition. And there's like very, she used the words intense images of her crying. I think A, reflecting on the pain and why would someone do this, but B, you can also see the simultaneous like reflection in her eyes of like, this has ruined my career. And especially right before the Olympics. And then Tanya Harding, the ice skater, later was either found guilty or had to settle out of court or something. But the speculation, the assumption is that Tanya Harding had something to do with it and either knew that the attacker was going to attack or paid the attacker to attack or whatever. But what's interesting is I don't really remember anything. I of course don't remember the incident, but I feel really shitty for not remembering this ice skater's name. But Tanya Harding went on to be the more famous of the two because of the controversy surrounding her. And then later on, I remember seeing her on like those early 2000s, maybe at the latest mid 2000s shows on like MTV, where it was like, I love the 90s, I love the 80s, I love the 70s, I love the early 2000s, where like celebrities from those time zone or timelines or those eras would just talk about big important moments in history. And I remember Tanya Harding being on that show. That was my first memory of her. And it was like kind of rooted in comedy. Like the people commentating on it were being funny or just like telling funny anecdotes about the 90s or the 80s or the 70s or the whatevers. And I knew nothing about her controversy at the time. Only that she was that woman on the I Love the 90s shows, which is interesting because I don't know if that's like a redemption arc for her or whatever. Maybe I'm talking about this for way too long. It was just a thing that happened in 1994. Just thought that was interesting. Okay, here's a big one. In 1994, I think it might have even been June-ish. I could be wrong. Kurt Cobain was found dead in his home, and it was discovered that he committed suicide 3 days prior. And look, there's so many things to say about that. Am I culturally well-versed in Nirvana lore? No, not really. But Smells Like Teen Spirit was one of the first songs that we learned as a band in Live for Tomorrow. And it's very clear to see how much of an influence that Nirvana had on some of the bands that I am directly influenced by. I don't know if my influence directly comes from Nirvana or Dave Grohl's drumming, but it's foolish if you're talking about historical rock, grunge, punk adjacent bands. You can't talk about the history of that genre of music without talking about Nirvana, and you can't talk about Nirvana without talking about Kurt Cobain. And then everybody knows that he eventually committed suicide. And I believe, man, this is really fucked up. I believe that he was, okay, this one I am actually going to Google real fast. Hold on. How was Kurt Cobain when he passed? 27 years. Yes, that's right. He was part of the 27 Club. Ooh, I just got chills. If you're not familiar with the 27 Club, there are many artists who have passed away at the age of 27, many of whom ultimately ended up committing suicide. I think Amy Winehouse is in that bunch, a bunch of other famous musicians and artists and whatever. Shit. This is one of those moments, again, where I don't think I'm going to cry, but I definitely could. Because when I was 27, I was real close. For the last 5 years, it's been on my mind. Maybe 6 years. And I didn't mean to take this in a bummer of a direction, so I'm going to maybe try and do a 180 and pivot back to some positivity or just some interesting information. But much of my 20s was spent contemplating suicide. The how, the separation from friends and family so that people wouldn't miss me. Maybe I'll stop going down that rabbit hole because it's a bit too much of a bummer. It's just wild to believe that, first of all, I've made it. I'm 3 years past it, but like that I made it past that 27 Club. Not that I believe that my name would have gone down historically as being someone in the 27 Club. It's just insane to believe how many people want to kill themselves in their 20s and how many prolific artists, if they would have been able to hang on in some capacity, would still be around and heralded to this day as like important figures in history. Like Kurt Cobain and Nirvana likely would have had, if not a few more years as a band together, just like they would have gone down in rock and roll history, regardless of if Kurt Cobain had committed suicide. And it's just sad, right? Because it's like, it's just a reflection on, am I comparing myself one-to-one to Kurt Cobain? No. But the thing that we do have in common is that we're musicians and that we are artists, and that to be someone who wants to be an artist does inherently mean there's some accompanying suffering. There's a desperation to be loved or acknowledged or seen or heard or felt or understood, that we continue to put ourselves out there. Art piece after art piece after art piece, no matter if you're a painter, a musician, or a writer, a director, an actor, whatever. We do these things for that love. And maybe I'm projecting here, maybe this isn't the blanket truth, but I can see that I have enough in common with that type of person to have been alarmed about my mental health during that time. That like, well, if they had all the success in the world and couldn't make it in their own mind, then how do I have any hope? How do I have any chance? Anyways, Kurt Cobain killed himself that year. Sorry. I'm sorry. That was aggressive. 2 serial killers were killed. John Wayne Gacy, the clown killer, was executed. John Wayne Gacy, I don't know if I said that right. John Wayne Gacy and Jeffrey Dahmer. I know that John Wayne Gacy was executed and Jeffrey Dahmer got the fuck beat out of him in prison, which I think ultimately he ended up dying as a result of those injuries. What can I even say about that? What should I say about that? Probably nothing, right? I don't really know much about the murderers, the deaths, the history behind them. I'm not really big into serial killer films or documentaries. I think those things are, look, I'm not judging you for watching them. I just think it's an abomination that they get made because it's nothing short of a bummer, but like true crime is addicting, and to exist in that negative mind space for so long when you're like obsessed with watching series after series about serial killers or deaths or homicides or whatever, it's sort of a bummer mindset to be in all the time, and I'm already bummed out. I don't need that in my life. Okay. Films. Let's talk films. Forrest Gump and The Lion King came out in 1994. The Lion King. Oh, this is pretty cute. The Lion King is a big film for me. Just because it was one of my favorite Disney films growing up, and I think that it still is. The music is still some of the best in Disney's history. But also, there's this moment between Simba and Mufasa in the film that I quoted a lot when I was a kid. And this next story, I want to be very clear when I'm talking about this. I still have a relationship with my biological father. I talk to him often. I go see him often. I guess I can leave it at that. My biological father is still in my life, but I also have a stepdad who has been around pretty much as far back as I can remember. I think that my mom and dad got divorced when I was 1, which really set me up to believe I'm a problem. Whether or not that's true, I'm certain that me as an infant had nothing to do with my parents getting divorced, but the timeline and then reflecting back on it in my teens and 20s made me think that I'm the reason everybody hates me, and I'm the reason everybody else is miserable, so I might as well not even be here. My parents got divorced because of me. It's probably not true. I didn't even have a personality when they got divorced, so whatever. I have a stepdad who I also call dad, but But I don't think we started calling him dad until I was maybe 4 or 5. But when I started to learn how to even speak, The Lion King had already been in the cultural zeitgeist for 3 or 4 years. And an early memory I have is quoting The Lion King with my dad, my stepdad. There's just a line in The Lion King where Mufasa says to Simba, something, 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 because we're pals, right? And then Simba says, right. And then Mufasa says, and we always will be, right? And then Simba says, right. My stepdad used to say that to me before bed. If I was like being tucked in or reading a book or something. She used to say, because we're pals, right? Right. And we always will be, right? Right. Good night. Go to bed. That was a cute memory. Lion King came out that year. And Forrest Gump came out that year. Forrest Gump isn't that important of a film to me. It's a great film. In fact, the Forrest Gump, the only way that Forrest Gump is actually relevant to my life, especially recently, is when this last episode, the murder and music, mystery and murder, music and murder, something like that. The last episode of the podcast that I talked about, I was on Mackinac Island acting in the murder mystery on the Grand Hotel, at the Grand Hotel, whatever. Go back and watch the last episode. I acted in a murder mystery on an island called Mackinac Island at a hotel called Grand Hotel. And I played a character. The timeline of this murder mystery was placed in the 1920s. And so a lot of the other actors are using like transatlantic accents, just talking like this, eh? But my character was supposed to be a big flirt. I was supposed to like flirt with all the women participants and actors and whatever, and it wasn't supposed to be wildly inappropriate, but it was just a character trait of this character. And I found it very difficult to speak in the transatlantic accent and flirt. Like, you got beautiful eyes, honey. I didn't like that. And so I went with like an undereducated Southern accent that was inspired by Forrest Gump. So it wasn't quite like this. There wasn't that much draw to it. I got British there. I didn't mean to it. I didn't mean to do that. But it was pretty, Southern. I'd come up and talk to you. You have beautiful eyes, ma'am. It was inspired by Forrest Gump. That was probably a little too cringy for me, so I'm going to move on past that. It's funny. I really only have one note, and that is China performs a nuclear test. And when did that happen? June 10th. On my birthday, China performs a nuclear test. They had probably performed nuclear tests before that. I don't know when China got access to nuclear weapons. Let's find out. I'm going to go to Google, and I'm actually going to use talk to text, which actually appears to be slipping on iPhones. I've talked to John Kelly, the guest that I've had on plenty of times. Twice? 3 times? I don't know. My buddy John and I have talked about how much Apple iPhones talk to text is slipping. It's not working as much anyway. But whatever. Okay, here we go. When did China launch its first nuclear test? Okay, China conducts its first nuclear test in 1964. So this wasn't as groundbreaking as I thought. I think when I first read the headline, I thought that China launched its first nuclear weapon test on my birthday in 1994. That would have been wild, and I probably would have gone on some rambling bit about that's why I'm X, Y, or Z fucked up, mentally ill, whatever. I was going to blame it on China for launching a nuke. But no, that's pretty much it. Those are all the notes I have for today's podcast. Actually, that's not true. I have one more little anecdote, and then we're going to get out of here because what am I even talking about at this point? This is just a narcissist complex. where I thought it would be important to put out an episode on my birthday because I haven't put an episode out in a month. And my passion for this podcast is fleeting, and I'm trying to find some semblance of interest to keep me hanging on to it. When I was in high school, one of the cringiest things that I used to do was vlog. I used to do daily vlogs. And similar to how these podcasts are long rants about nothing, the vlogs were also long rants about nothing, except I was an annoying, immature teenager who was like, "What's up, guys?" with my Sony Bloggy. And oh, you can hear my downstairs neighbors screaming at their kid even louder. This is so much fun. I hate them so much. Let's try to get real quiet. Maybe we can hear them. Okay, I'm going to stop. Oh, but the stomping is nice. I'm sorry. This is the show that's not about ADHD, but is filled with proof it exists. It's so fucking annoying. But I thought people liked my vlogs. I thought for a while people liked my podcast. It might ultimately just be me. In a similar way, it was pretty much just me who liked my vlogs back in the day. There was this YouTuber named Shay Carl who ran into his own controversy at a certain point that I don't really have any interest in talking about. A, because I'm kind of uninformed about it, but B, it was long enough ago that like it's not really relevant to what we're talking about today. I just mean at the time, he and his family did daily vlogs. And that was pretty much my inspiration. I was like, well, he's doing it. That's fun to watch. That's what I used to watch on YouTube as daily vloggers back in the day. I might as well do my own. And so I did daily vlogs. They were whatever. Could have been 5 to 15 minutes. Whoa. That was loud. It could have been 5 to 15 minutes about literally nothing. What's up, guys? Here's my dog. What's up, guys? I'm at school. What's up, guys? School's out. What's up, guys? I'm about to go to bed. That's it. But for the 50th episode of my vlog, I decided to invite a bunch of people over to my house to be in the 50th vlog, which I thought was going to be everybody kind of standing in front of the camera and we all kind of laugh and talk and tell stories together and whatever. I didn't really have a plan. I only had ambition. So I would say maybe 20 people came over, which is cool. But what happened was, when I reflect on it, it's maybe the thing I cringe about the most. Is that I put myself out there by inviting people to my house who had never been there before, who weren't really my friends, but who knew about the vlogs. And I wanted to pretend, maybe, if I'm reflecting on it now, that I had fans. I don't fucking know. These weren't fans. These were just other students that went to the same school that I did. But I said, hey, if you want to be in the 50th episode, come to my house and we'll do it on this day. Now I'm going to rewind again because I do not mean to insult my mom or stepdad in this process. But one of the things that I realize as I reflect on later in life is my parents hung on to smoking cigarettes a lot longer than most families did. I know that there are still plenty of people out there who still smoke cigarettes, and I'm not talking about any other consumption of nicotine. Vaping wasn't a big thing at the time. I'm sure maybe there were some e-cigarettes, but like, I'm not talking about tobacco or dip or whatever. I'm talking about physically smoking cigarettes. But they didn't just smoke them outside. They also smoked them in the car and in the house with the windows up or the windows closed or whatever. And it was just kind of a thing that I didn't realize was a problem until I was out of there. I always smelled like cigarette smoke. All of my belongings would smell like cigarette smoke. Especially because at a certain point, I just started stealing my parents' cigarettes. Or when they started rolling cigarettes, I just started rolling my own cigarettes and hiding it from them until I got old enough to the point where they couldn't do anything about it. And so I was just smoking in front of them. Or at least I believe they couldn't do anything about it. And then they didn't do anything about it. But there's layers to this. So everybody shows up. And as I reflect on it now, if I'm just a guest walking into the home, the initial impression is, holy shit, it smells like cigarette smoke in here. Are those walls yellow? Pretty sure it's supposed to be white. Is that refrigerator yellow? I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be white. Cigarette smoke stuck to everything, clothes, walls, carpet, the dog, all of us. So, again, as a guest at that thing, I could have imagined that the first impression is, holy shit, this is extreme. But then when you get in there, I bill it as this like 50th episode party, right? Like I'm having a party. I don't have any food. I don't have any snacks. I don't have any drinks. I don't have shit out for anybody. And so it was just, whatever, at the very least, supply food and drinks at a party, right? So you walk in, it smells like cigarette smoke. There's no food. There's no drink. You've been dropped off by your parents probably. So you're going to have to call your parents to pick you up. Smartphones probably weren't big. They were definitely, I think at least the first iPhone was out. Maybe a few people around had Blackberries. I think people still had cell phones so they could call their parents. But there was definitely plenty of people who at a certain point used our house landline to call their parents to come pick them up because they were bored. But then we finally get to the main event. Everybody's in the office, standing in front of my computer webcam. I'm not even using my Bloggy, my little handheld camera at the time. I'm just having everyone stand in front of my webcam. And I don't know what to talk about. There was nothing substantive. I had no opinions on anything in the world. I had no opinions on the people who were there with me. It was just a desperate ploy to be loved and envied and appreciated and valued and seen as cool. And first of all, it was not that. But also after maybe 60 to 90 seconds of me saying, hey, it's the 50th party, 50th episode. What do we think, everybody? Can we get a round of applause? I turn to my 20 acquaintances, maybe 5 friends in that group. And while there's no applause, no raucous happiness, one person goes, this party sucks. And then everybody laughs at him. And then like 3 or 4 people walk out. And I'm rolling video at this point. So all of this is on video. And in that moment, I recognized how embarrassed I was and how ashamed I was and how irritated I was that this wasn't going to be over for at least another hour. And that started the slow spiral of, I'm still going to make stuff, but I'm pretty sure nobody actually enjoys it. And look, that kid could have been saying, this party sucks, as just a joke. Like he might not have actually meant that. Probably he might not have had any expectations that there was going to be food or drinks or games or anything like that. He thought maybe he was just going to show up and be in front of the camera for 35 seconds and that was going to be enough for him. And maybe he was actually excited to be there and the this party sucks thing was just a tension-breaking funny moment. But man, that sent me spiraling. And pretty much since then, I've been embarrassed about getting groups of people together to celebrate me ever since. And on that note, one of the big fears about today, specifically June 8th, not June 10th, today in my universe, as of recording, I've asked maybe 10 to 15 people to come join me for like dinner and bowling for my birthday. And I've got, I don't know, maybe 11, excuse me, oh my goodness, maybe 11 RSVPs. Oh, I'm a sleepy boy, sorry. I've got maybe 11 RSVPs, which is great. I don't want a big party celebration in honor of me. At this point, I've become really uncomfortable about those types of things. I really like the idea of like surprise parties, but I can't just expect that that's going to happen or it wouldn't be a surprise. And so I felt some pressure to maybe like spearhead my own celebration. But as a person who like has a really hard time celebrating himself, asking people to come celebrate me, shit, why am I feeling like I'm gonna cry here? Asking people to come celebrate me it's just really hard. Because why would I ask people to show me that they love me if I can't even show myself that I love myself? I don't know. This is really shitty. And I'm going to bring it down here again. This podcast always goes to me just ragging on myself or self-sabotaging. But yeah, I think, look, it's not, again, I've said 1-to-1 a lot in this podcast. It's not a 1-to-1. I'm not afraid to have this collection of people get together to have dinner and go bowling with me because of that 50th episode fake party. But when I think about parties that I'm putting on or events that I'm putting on that are for me, all I do is bully myself. I shame myself for having an ego or for being so desperate to be seen or loved or cared for that like I get really nervous about doing it. And so for the last 5 years, I've done, maybe even the last 10 years, I've done pretty much nothing for my birthday. If anything, I'll go out with a friend, maybe 2 friends, or if I'm in a relationship at the time, that partner, to go out and have a drink. But I feign this, what's the word I'm looking for? I pretend as though I hate my birthday so much that you better not celebrate me. You better not do anything good for me. And so for the last 10 years, it's been like, I don't even care. It's like, yeah, sure, it's my birthday, but I don't care. We shouldn't do anything. With the slight manipulative thought that like maybe somebody will actually see that I do want to have a party and they'll throw me a surprise party and whatever. But that's manipulative. If I want to have a party that somebody else throws, I should just ask people. I should just tell people that I don't like putting on parties by myself, but I like to have parties. And so, yeah, for the last 10 years, those types of things haven't happened. And I put out a podcast last year called Our Birthdays. Is it even worth it to celebrate your birthday? Are celebrating birthdays worth it? Are birthdays worth celebrating? Something like that. Where I talked about some horror stories that happened during my birthday, especially during relationships. Anyway, all that to say, I do want to celebrate me. And I'm trying to not feel bad about that anymore. Because like if I look back on it, even though, yeah, I've made it and I've had a whatever, I'm here, I got a roof over my head, I got a camera, I got lights, I got food, I got dogs, I got people in my life that love me. I also feel like I've had a really hard 10 years emotionally, because while I have those things, I haven't been able to find a way to be appreciative of them in a way that makes me want to stay alive. And so I'm trying to get better about that. And so I asked a few people to come have dinner and go bowling with me. And that's going to happen in about 6 hours. And as soon as I turn this camera off and end this episode, I will be in a perpetual panic attack until maybe we show up at bowling after dinner. Because there's these weird balances. There's weird fears that I'm balancing right now. Where it's like, first of all, what if nobody comes? Am I allowed to feel bad about that? I don't know. First of all, Not nobody is going to come. There are going to be some people that show up. But I can't expect anybody to show up because then I'll feel entitled to their attendance. And that's my ego showing. And I haven't figured out a way to soothe my ego, forgive my ego, or accept my ego. I have a difficult problem with ego. On the flip side, what if everybody comes and it's boring, like the 50th vlog party, and then somebody in the middle of dinner goes, "This party sucks." Could you fucking imagine? What if everybody comes and then I look around the room? Okay, well that's thing 2. Thing 3, which I think is the most likely scenario. Enough people will come for me to, in theory, look around and appreciate how many friends I actually have. I don't need 50 to 100 people at a fucking party. I just want some people who actually know me, who care about me, and whose love I reciprocate. I want some people who I love there. But if they're there, all I can do, because of how much I hate myself, is look around the room and go, they're only here because they feel bad for me. That's it. And I really got to get out of that, because like, people have personal agency. People are allowed to say no. People are allowed to not come. But if they do come, it's because they wanted to. And because that is what of the millions of things they could do in a given day, they chose to come. But I'm really worried about my ability to acknowledge that or believe that or accept that. They would rather be with me than do anything else. Because I'm with me all day long. And I would prefer to do anything else than talk to me all day. To talk to me for 6 hours. I hear myself. I see myself. I am with myself enough. I'm tired of myself. And so I'm asking them to come celebrate me? That's all I'll feel for a good amount of time tonight. If you're listening and you weren't invited, don't even consider taking that personally. Or please, I'm begging you not to take that personally, because the only reason I didn't invite you is because I went, there's no way they'd want to come. So I'm not even going to ask them, because the fear of rejection is so much worse than just wondering. That's not true. Because now as I'm articulating that, I feel bad that I didn't invite you. But we're here, right? Okay, we need to land this plane. I think that's all I got for you. Thursday, June 13th, Midwest Skies is going to be playing live in Bay City with our friends Bring Your Best and Lemire. That's Lemeer. Come check us out in Bay City. Then the following day, hometown show in Grand Rapids. Friday night, we are playing at Mulligan's Pub. I've played a few times at Mulligan's. I have a good time there every time. The only issue I have is that many venues will supply alcohol or drinks or give drink tickets to the bands. Mulligan's does that, but they only provide PBR. And man, it's not just because I dislike beer, but even when I liked beer, PBR was just the worst. So if you can't come tonight to my party, although I'm realizing that this episode is out a few days after the quote unquote party, which is just going to dinner and bowling. And if you can't come to the Bay City show, but you're Grand Rapids adjacent, it'd be really nice to see you at that show. And then shit, man. I really think that's all I got. That's all I can say. We talked about 1994. We talked about a boy that believed he could be an astronaut, but because he can't see red that well, and purple kind of looks like blue to him, that he gave up on his dreams of being a football playing astronaut. I could have played football in space. That would have been cool. Shit. That's it. I'm out of here. I love you guys so much. Thank you for listening. I have a Patreon. You can support me or the show or whatever the creative endeavors that I'm working on at a given time. Oh, last thing. I just did a really cool photo shoot that I can't wait to show you how it turned out with Emma. She's been on this podcast before. I think, what did we call it? The Art of Saying Goodbye was our episode. Her and her friends Maya and Madeline asked me to do a creative photo shoot for them inspired by the film Braid. And then we also did some photos that had nothing to do with that film that I thought were just like cool art projects. Those photos are almost certainly out by now. So either follow me or Emma on social or on Instagram. That's either at David J. Mund or at Emma Storyteller, or they're going to be on my business photo page, Mund Media Creations. So you've heard by now, I'm sure. Go to catandcrew.com, enter the promo code Monday. That's KATANDCREW.com. Enter the promo code Monday, MUNDAY, for 10% off your first purchase. Check out the Patreon. Come to a Midwest Skies show. And celebrate your damn birthday, because if you don't, probably nobody else will. Unless you ask them to celebrate it for you. In which case, you might feel bad. Okay, I'm going to go now. I love you, and I'll see you next time. Whenever that is.